in Article 2784 about land ownership. Now, this was a really great article. You explained that the Brits among us can't actually own land, and all land ownership in their system is vested in their king. That's why it's called real estate, which means royal estate, right?
Right.
So the process you describe to remedy this is to declare and record your political status, and then bring forward and publish the United States land patent that is owed to you, and to chase down the chain of title. Can you be more explicit? Because people have a lot of questions about this.
Okay. Typically, all of our land has typically been hijacked. Okay.
Stolen?
Yes, they've taken title to it.
Okay.
That's what it's called. They have taken title to it under the excuse that our government is in abeyance, missing. And so they have rolled all this up into trusts, real estate trusts, and they have then papered over our land patents and helped themselves to a title to it. And a title is just the same as, Sir Sagramore, Lord Lindsay, it's a title. It's something that they came up with as a way of organizing the land in terms of a description. Mm-hmm. Okay? Mm-hmm. Okay, so they've taken title to all of our property. They've placed it all in a trust that's run by them, conveniently enough. And they've applied all of these different titles in the form of descriptions, things like Block 2, Lot 3 of the Happy Valley subdivision. Okay, that's a municipal description. Or 2020 Spring Street. I literally had a conversation with a gal who was going around and doing this as a job. She just literally walked up our street one sunny day, and I saw her with a clipboard, and I went out and I asked her what she was doing. And she very chirpily told me that she was assigning street names and numbers.
Really?
And I said, gee, so you are going to assign a street name and number to my house? And who gives you the right to do this? And she kind of stopped and looked at me like, well, that's my job. That's what I was told to go out here and do. I guess it never occurred to her that there was the least little bit of a fishy undertone to this. Anyway, that's what they've been doing. They've been going around creating and copywriting all these descriptions of your property, and then claiming that they own this description, which is their property, and that they have some sort of vested interest in your land and your assets because they applied a name or a label to it or a cataloging system to it. Sort of like what King William did in England when he created the Doomsday Book. Okay? But without any sufficient reason to do this, because there are employees. Hello? Okay, so they've been wandering around doing this and taking title to our land and dumping our land into a trust, which they then can ramrod around and act as the trustees for. And the antidote to that is to realize that it's your land and that the underlying U.S. patent belongs to you too. So if you obtain a title, there's a patent underlying that title, which is actually the basis of ownership of the actual factual ground.
Okay.
Okay. It's not just some airy-fairy thing. A patent is about the actual cadastral survey. It's about land. Okay, so that's why it's called a land patent. So you're talking about rocks, and you're talking about surface water and subsurface water and soil on top of the land, and so you're talking in two different capacities. One is the actual factual, what we think of, right? Land, and everything else, all these titles and descriptions are just that, made up descriptions of your land.
Fictional entities.
Yes, the fictional entities have swooped down upon you while you were asleep. And they've been generating no end of BS. Is what it essentially comes down to. Just, to make false claims in commerce against you and your assets, to try to redefine or relabel you or your, whatever deal. Let me make you a new deal. You don't like the name 2020 Spring Street? Well, we'll just create a new office in the government and we'll call it parcel number 22-42-42-10-10-10-10-10-A. There you go. Okay. So this is what these idiots have been doing, and we've been letting them get away with it. So I guess we're idiots too. But anyway, the bottom line is that everybody who owns property in this country, if you're an American, has the right to own it outright. So the reason that you declare yourself as an American first is that only Americans can own land in America.
Makes sense.
So if you're a Brit and you have a title to a piece of land in America, you still can't own it because anything that you claim here belongs to the Queen. And all you get from the Queen is a title. See?
Mm-hmm.
So if you're an American and you declare and record your political status as an American state national or as an American state citizen, either one, you can go claim the U.S. patent, and you can stand there foursquare and say, this is mine, I have every right to it. I'm the landlord. Hello? And anything that has been attached to that patent as a title, you can trace back to where it entered that system.
Mm-hmm.
Because normally there's a transfer of patent. Then there is a point, usually in the 1930s, but not always, when that land entered the title system.
Okay.
And then you'll see where assumed municipal or assumed British territorial citizens had a title on that property.
Okay.
And then you'll have title, right?
Okay.
So you research your land patent to where it was entered into the U.S. patent system.
Mm-hmm.
And then you carry forward and you'll get to an end of where the patents stop.
Okay.
And then you pick up with the title system and you follow forward through all the title records.
Okay.
That, so you establish a chain of title from where you picked up the title, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that follows all the way back to the patent history.
Okay.
And that takes you all the way back.
Okay.
To the very first land patent.
Okay. And so in the article, you say whether or not it's in a Western state as of 30th of September 2020, it is defined as a privately owned land in an American state of the Union and is not subject to any title or administration by any of the King's officers.
Isn't that just sweet?
Yeah. So, but people are saying, well, what does that really mean?
Well, what they did, okay, so I described to you how they murdered, blackmailed, and chased off the loyal officers of the United States of America Federation.
Okay.
So as a result, there was nobody home to call the states, the actual states, into assembly.
Gotcha.
There was nobody from the United States of America Federation to counter their claims. And for a long time, we all just kind of despaired and threw up our hands and thought, well, this is crazy. And we weren't told what was going on either. You know, you have to realize when Uncle Quinwood took off out of this melee on the Maryland border, he was just a young man and didn't know if his father had survived the attack or if his younger brother was alive. I mean, he was riding through the night for his life, and it was a long time before he got, you know, far enough away and settled down enough where he could even begin the process of finding out what happened to his family, much less what happened to the Great Seals or anything.
Right.
I mean, you know. So this has been a long process for those loyal federal officers and their families too. But anyway, because the Federation and the states were not meeting on a regular basis and not functioning correctly, when these Western states that were formed during and after the Civil War applied for statehood, there was nobody home to welcome and enroll them.
Right. Right.
So it would be kind of like, you know, going up and knocking on the door and nobody can open the door, you know, or nobody's there to open the door and welcome you into the Union.
Right.
So all that could be done was that they were states in name, or what I call states in waiting. And even that is kind of a stretch, because the best they could do was to be territorial states of states, confederate states of the territorial government is what they were. Okay, so that accounts for the custodial role of the federal agencies and the federal government in the Western states, and also accounts for a lot of the reason that so much of the land in the Western states is never passed into private ownership. Okay?
Okay.
So what has happened is that the state assemblies have gotten their act together. The United States of America Federation, unincorporated Federation of States, and you know, those who were part of that whole organization have gotten their act together. Okay, so many generations down the pike, we figured it out, we got it together, here we are. And the states that were already Union, those that were in the Union prior to the Civil War, their assemblies are up and operating again, and have people with the standing, the proper lawful standing, to be able to welcome the Western states home, to grant the full measure of statehood that they always thought they had.
Right.
Okay, so those assemblies were polled, as you very well know, and by roll call vote were asked whether or not these Western states and other states that were formed during the Civil War should be enrolled as full states of the Union and members of the Federation. And the answer came back yes. Thanks to all of you. And as a result, all of those quasi-states have now been welcomed in to the actual Union and are officially, finally, states of the Union and members of the Federation. And they have all the rights, prerogatives, and powers and property interests of any other state. So it's been a very long time coming. Your home state, Washington, has been waiting since 1889.
Yeah.
And West Virginians have been waiting since 1863.
Wow.
So finally, you own your land, and there is no excuse for any territorial or municipal trust, which means that those assets have got to be rolled out of those trusts and delivered to the private property owners. And there has to be an orderly, systematic, and fair means to do this. And our state assemblies are going to be engaged in providing that kind of service to people in their state to make sure that people are not being cheated or not being served with gigantic tax bills coming out of the debts of these municipal corporations, and that they're not being mistaken for either municipal citizens or territorial citizens or any more of that rot.
Mm-hmm.
And so, there's going to be a lot of work to do, folks. But at the end of the day, the good news is that you are the actual landowners. You are the people. And all of the stuff that they have cashiered away in these state trusts, all of that actually does belong to you. And as the presumed donors, you get to direct what happens to it. Not them, not their bankruptcy trustees, and not their creditors.
Fantastic, right. And you told the bankruptcy trustees that in no uncertain terms. Now, you recommended that people go to the Bureau of Land Management website and start locating their patent information.
Right. It's online.
Yeah. BLM.com, I believe. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you can look it up pretty easily. They've done a good job. I mean, a lot of the times, I whip and beat the federale agencies because they've been so ineptly mismanaged and misdirected in too many cases.
Yeah.
But in the case of the BLM land records, which they inherited from the government land office, they did a pretty credible job of keeping them straight and having them available. And now they have completely organized and have it computerized, digital format. And most of us can just go to the BLM website and enter in the right coordinates, in terms of township and range and that sort of thing. And boom, there it is.
Fantastic. And I made a mistake. It's blm.gov, G-O-V. So that's the correct website. Sorry about that. Now, we've been doing property research with an assembly member in Pierce County, and they have identified their piece of land and parcel as the land patent and registered in the BLM, but it was sold and recorded in the system 3 subsequent years. So the first time was 1820, and then it was recorded and sold again in 1869, and recorded and sold again in 1870. There was no, it was to different individuals. How can they sell and record the land patent, same land patent, 3 different times?
Well, the same way that you're going to do it. As I was explaining, there will be an original land patent, and then there will be in most cases, there will be a series of patent holders who are Americans, right? And we're entitled to own land. And at some point in that process, there will be a break. So you'll see patent 1, patent 2, patent 3 passing to different American owners.
Okay.
And then all of a sudden, usually in the 1930s, there'll be a break and everything will just, there'll be nothing more on the patent search, okay? And then you'll go to the title system where they took these parcels and put them into territorial trusts,
Okay.
right? And then you'll see Title 1, Title 2, Title 3, Title 4, Title 5, all the way down to the point where you entered the picture, picked up a title from a purported Brit, even though it probably wasn't a Brit at all.
Yeah.
Okay. And so then you go all the way back up to the original title, and you have then another leg of the journey up the staircase of all those patents. And what you are claiming is actually the original patent.
Right. And
that is what belongs to you.
When they're doing the title searches, they would go to the land recording office then, correct?
Right. And you can make it easier on yourself for a couple $100 and go to a title company and have them do a chain of title search. And they can go back all the way in the title system. And when they get to the end of the title system, they stop because that's as far back as they know how to research.
Okay.
And at that point, you can do the BLM land patent search. But in order to do this, the very first thing that you have to figure out is how to describe your land in terms of township, range, those sorts of coordinates, which are physical.
Meets and bounds, right?
Well, meets and bounds are a little bit different.
Oh, okay.
Meets and bounds are more local. That's a soil thing where you're actually there and you're dealing with landmarks.
Okay.
Land patents work on geophysical survey. Okay, so long ago in much of America, not all of America, but most of America, the U.S. Geological Survey was conducted. And what they did is they basically laid down a survey grid over the physical topography, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you have everything that it's all sectioned off in 1 square mile portions.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And these are then sections have 640 acres in them. And you'll have like township 17, range 17 west, section 32, and then in section 32 you'll have 640 acres, and that will be divided up into 4 quadrants, right?
Mm-hmm.
And each one of those will be further subdivided, and finally you're going to get down to a parcel.
Mm-hmm.
And it'll usually have some loony bin description like the southeast 1/2 of the northeast 1/4 of the southeast 1/4 of
right. And then
you're either going to have to learn how to do that yourself, how to break that down from a USGS map, or you're going to have to find somebody who can do it with you and show you how.
Okay. And they also reference various meridians that they used as a marker.
Right.
And so here in Washington, California, Oregon, they use the Western Meridian as, that's like the guiding line. And then they go out to the 14th one quarter, you know, blah, blah, blah.
Well, whether they're using longitudinal lines or whether they're living, using the township grid, each portion of the country has its own peculiarities in terms of land descriptions, but they are not descriptions in the same style or using the same methods as 2020 Springdale Lane. They're actual physical descriptions that tie back to locations, actual physical locations. And so at the end of the day, you're talking about topography. You're talking about location on a map of physical topography.
Right.
And it's not just a airy-fairy, oh, gee, I think I'll call this Piney Woods. And now am I going to call it a street or a lane or a road or, whatever.
Right. Okay. Very good. Well, I hope that helps everybody and helps clarify. You also,
another thing,
yeah,
you can make things can be made a lot easier for yourself by hiring a title search, but from a title company, getting the title search, a chain of title search on your land. You can also make life easier if you feel overwhelmed by trying to figure out the township range or meridian or whatever, by contacting a local surveyor.
Okay. And they'll
And
do
local surveyors can very easily tell you, oh, well, you're the northwest quarter. So you can get help from local surveyors with that.
That's very helpful. Thank you, Anna.
Links to Anna's articles and resources can be found in the video description box. Thank you for subscribing, liking and sharing.